distracted.
I'd like to call to order. Whoops. Now, I would like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, February 26th. I'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you wouldn't mind, would you lead it for me, Director Elithar?
Sure. Ready to begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And time for roll call. As you can see, we're all here. I needed, if possible, we need a motion to adopt our agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one in opposition. Public comments. Persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. A request to speak form is required to be submitted to the Executive Secretary prior to the start of the meeting if possible. Public comment should start by stating name, address, and topic. The board is not permitted during this time to enter into a dialogue with the speaker. If any of you are interested, the speaking forms are at the back. And our first and one from the public is Mr. Michael Hunsaker.
Michael Hunsaker, speaking as president of the Twin Oaks Valley Property Owners Association. And I wish to address an issue of charging for service that is not rendered. In 2010, the state CAL FIRE department requested a change of building permits and building requirements, building codes. And in 2011, a surprisingly quick period of time, this was inaugurated and put into effect. This called for the institution of internal fire sprinklers on single-family dwellings, townhouses, and condominiums. All of these are elements of private ownership. And the change was to allow for a maximum capacity flow of around 35 gallons per minute or second, something like that. And as a consequence of this, the Vallecitos Water District increased the capacity for the extra flow requirements. And that included going from a 5/8 valve to a 3/4 inch valve. And the facility charges were changed by you from 500 gallons per day to 750 gallons per day. And the service charges, monthly service charges, were also increased for 3/4 inch valves. Now that is justified as far as it goes, but very few homes have been built, and a state board recommended but not require that 3/4 inch valves and 5/8 valves be charged the same. And you have progressively increased and decreased the differential between the 3/4 and the 5/8 valves. Thus, people are paying now for services, fire service protection that they are not receiving. I think this is something that needs to be reevaluated as a matter of equity, not of just revenue concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a new sound.
Yes. All right, our next issue is a presentation.
Maybe actually, I'm sorry.
Oh, you have another one?
He just, he'd like one under the public comments. Sure.
Okay, is it Sahar Naimi?
Yes.
Please come to the podium. And you'll notice you have 3 minutes with a little timer up there to make you nervous.
Sure, no problem. Good evening. My name is Reza Samandari and Sahar Naimi. We are business partner investor, and we bought this piece of property, 1217 Nordoff Road. And prior to closing this escrow, we went to Vallecitos Water District. We asked, is anything pending in this, several times, and they just told us the few things is there, with the previous owner who applied for, and we have all the emails. But after we closed the escrow, then we find out there's whole lots of lists. They said is need to have a new study done, and it's going to be a whole lot of different. And the very thin margin on this project, I'm building a 15 home in this land. That's really throw us out, because we cannot make any money on this project the way it is now. And that's why we come in here to the board to discuss it. And I have my engineer here. He can just tell some more detail. He's involved with it.
Hi, Lee Whittington, Sweetwater Engineering. I'm at 1968 Sunset Cliffs Boulevard in Ocean Beach. And I've been the engineer since the start on this project. It started back in like 2014 and took like 4 years to get through the county. And during that whole time we were working, started maybe right after that in 16 or 17, started with Vallecitos trying to work through the water and sewer district issues. And the property is situated in such that Vallecitos has a sewer line right in front of the property, and Vista Irrigation has a water line right in front of the property. We're actually part of Vista Irrigation District's in LAFCO's boundary, but we're within the sphere of influence of Vallecitos Water District. So during the whole 4 years of planning on this project, the idea was always, and we've got emails and stuff, the idea was always to connect to Vallecitos Water and Vista Irrigation Sewer. And we went all the way through LAFCO. I think LAFCO is done. We're within, it's being submitted right now. I mean, it's being recorded right now. They've already voted and approved it and all that. So we're within, we've got an overlap of boundaries now, but the plan was always to just connect to Vallecitos Sewer and Vista Water. But now, because the application expired, the previous owner, I was working with the previous owner and he sold the property. Because the application expired, we're being required to start a new application, and the new application is requiring new sewer agreement, or new sewer studies, new water studies, possibility of de-annexing from VID, even though we've already completed that, possibility of more water improvements. We agreed to, during that process, we agreed to improve some off-site water areas and stuff like that. So.
I was going to say, the time is up. If you fill out another form, I could give you, but could you finish up in like 30 seconds?
Yeah, that was basically right there. So
Okay.
the new requirements being placed on this project are basically that, hey, we got to start all over, even though kind of a bunch of agreements were kind of already worked through before all this. So now the new requirement is new sewer study, new water study, possible disconnect from VID, even though we've even submitted the first round of construction plans, improvement and grading plans. So, but now we're kind of back to starting over, and we're wondering if we can work it out to
Thank
go
you.
back to the
Is that-
original agreement.
Are you familiar with what's going on here?
Just
Director Broom?
peripherally familiar with what's going on, and obviously it's not something the board can discuss as it's on
Right.
public comment, but what I would suggest is give me an opportunity to talk with staff, maybe meet with the developer And then if need be, we can agendize it at a future meeting to.
I would
have the board weigh
appreciate
in.
that. Would you,
We would appreciate probably the
Yeah.
agenda as
All
if
right.
we can.
President?
yes,
Could we direct staff to bring it to our next meeting? Time is money
Oh.
for these people. And at the next meeting, that's 2 weeks away, there's plenty of time for staff to look into it.
would like to direct staff to do that. Is that a possibility? They're nodding. The gentleman's right there in the audience.
I've worked with him for the last few years.
Thank you.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks at the agenda.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
It's only,
Is it only 1 week?
yeah, just to be clear, it's going to be the first Wednesday in March.
What's the date?
March 4th,
March
a
4th.
week from
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, so it's March, it's 1 week from tonight, not 2 weeks from tonight.
All right. Now we'll go on to a presentation by Chris Robbins from Public Information.
Thank you, President Evans. So a lot of the videos we show are fun and interesting. This time, one that's a little more pedantic, where we are explaining a process. This is the PICA inspection of the High Point development, where we're using Alicia's videoing and showing how technology was being used by consultants to actually review the status of some existing pipeline that had been in the ground over time.
Hi, my name is Chris Embry. I'm a regional manager with PICA, and I was a project manager at the High Point Condition Assessment Site. PICA stands for Pipeline Inspection and Condition Analysis Corporation. We have manufactured and developed several tools to inspect pipe. We have inline tools that inspect a pipe from inside of the pipeline, and we also have external tools that can inspect the pipe from the outside of the pipeline. Several agencies here in Southern California and throughout North America are using our technology currently. This technology can be used on any metallic pipeline. And here in the water industry, in potable, raw, recycled, as well as wastewater. We inspected the metallic pipelines at High Point. We're using electromagnetic remote field testing techniques to determine the remaining wall loss. In this instance, ductile iron pipe. Many older pipelines are out of sight and out of mind, but working with a proactive agency like Vallecitos, we're able to inspect before there are failures of pipelines.
My name is John Childs. I'm an inspector for Vallecitos Water District. I was the inspector specifically for the PICA High Point assessment up here at Woodland Heights, Glen. We're standing up here at Palos Vista Tank. We're right below the tank. One of the first things that Vallecitos did was we were responsible for marking out old ductile iron mains that are up here. Been up here, I believe for almost 12 years. And these lines have never been used and inactive. Also, there was 2 potholes that were done, and those locations were at known utility crossings, and we just wanted to get an evaluation and see if there was any sort of corrosion happening at those locations. So once we did mark out our lines, it was decided where we were going to make the entry points and the exit points for the PICA Sea Snake. This is a location where we did it. For Vallecitos was overseeing Cass Arrieta, who did the excavation, and we removed a section of pipe so the PICA Sea Snake instrument could be inserted. The day of the assessments, we pretty much stood back and just kind of let them do their magic. Vallecitos, myself. I was impressed with PICA's accuracy and the fact that they had come back with 2 different locations after their initial assessment. They had said there possibly could be some major corrosion, wanted us to excavate on those locations. When we did, we actually found significant corrosion, wall loss. One of them, when we were digging around on it, actually sprung a small leak right where they had said it was. I was completely blown away by how accurate it was. Not only did they give me a linear footage of exactly where it was at, but they actually gave me the clock phase. One was at 10 o'clock and one was at 10:30 on the pipe. And lo and behold, both of them were precisely at those locations. If this had been in service, this would have been quite a catastrophic main break.
After the inspection, we provide a color-coded map of the pipe to show areas of stress, corrosion, through holes, etc. We provide that to Vallecitos and engineers to be able to make a further informed decision. The information collected at High Point can allow Vallecitos to to make informed decisions on the remaining useful life, predict failures to save money, focusing their resources on areas of the pipe that need to be replaced and prevent outages, service disruptions, and further issues in the pipeline. In general, our inspections cost between 5 and 10% of the capital replacement cost of the pipelines we're inspecting, and we often find that less than 3% of the pipelines that we inspect need to be replaced. Sometimes if there are breaks in certain areas, it could be an easy assumption that those are the areas that are bad. That's not necessarily the case at all. In some cases, other parts of the pipeline further away and in different soil conditions may be in much worse case, and then the resources can be focused to the areas that actually need the repair and replacement. It was a pleasure working with Vallecitos staff as well as Vallecitos' inspection department on this successful project.
In my opinion, having seen the results from the PICA state tool with the accuracy of where they had said, hey, there's a problem, and physically seeing that problem has me impressed. And I do believe that this tool would be a great asset or help the district in assessing other areas of Vallecitos Water District. This has been a success for Vallecitos in that we get to actually assess the assessment. So I see a potential for this PICA technology benefiting both Vallecitos District and its customers, and the fact that we could possibly assess and know of a potential line failure premature and be able to address it. District inspection staff, while we were out here, but this being the first time, we started a rough draft of some standard operating procedures that we would want to follow and use for anytime we use PICA or this type of technology in the future.
Wow. That's an excellent video, and if you can get this little cone at the start to move like a Pixar light, you are going to win a lot of awards. Speaking of which, I hear you've also won a lot of awards.
General Manager, did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so we can maybe touch on it if you want to before the consent calendar. We can touch on it.
It seems appropriate while
Yeah,
it's
so
here.
I'll
Is
talk
that
about the
right?
timing. The board may remember that at the February 5th meeting, that there was a presentation made that shows some videos that we had gotten, or some awards that we had received from the California Water Environment Association for some work we had done, mostly that Day Without Water video. At the time, we won awards in the San Diego section for CWEA, but we were in the running for the statewide award. So we won 2 awards at this San Diego County section, and we recently were notified that we won a 2nd place and a 3rd place award at the statewide level. So that's really, really good news. And again, it's credit to Chris and his team with Alicia and Lisa. They make awesome videos, and they're getting recognized in the industry everywhere we go. So it's really good. The reference I made to the consent calendar, there's actually an item on the consent calendar where we're putting out an organizational achievement award to 3 of our employees, the 3 that I mentioned, for their work and their success in the videos that they've done. So it's on the consent, and the further success that they've received at the statewide level don't change that, but it just further acknowledges the great work that they've done. So thanks, Chris.
Yes.
How many feet of line did they inspect?
I don't know who's got that. James?
Yeah, I'm going to let James answer that one.
Director Hernandez, I don't have the exact number, but they inspected probably about 30% of the line or so 700 to 800 feet.
And if I saw it correctly, that was 100?
I'm sorry, 700 to 800 feet of the 12-inch, and they inspected 2 or 3 of the 8-inch cul-de-sacs, and I don't know that. So they did almost all the 8-inch line and about 30% of the 12-inch.
So 1,000 feet, plus or minus?
Plus or minus.
And I saw a number in there, $135,000?
Yeah, that includes the engineering portion of the support. We're still waiting on the final study and that chart that they talked about. We have not seen it yet, so.
So for $13 a foot, we were able to identify areas that needed to be repaired the developer will all obviously pay for. But in our future assessment of our own infrastructure, if we were to use the same facility and at $13 a foot, determine where we may have some of these deficiencies so they don't come to a $50 or half $1,000 like we had here the other day. It was more than that, I think. It was quite a bit more.
I would caution you not to fall in love with that $13 a foot number. This was ideal conditions. The road's not open to through traffic. The pipelines aren't servicing anybody. It's vacant land. Well, not vacant, it's improved. It's got streets and utilities, but there's no homes. This was the best case scenario. We couldn't ask for anything better. But it's encouraging. This is the future. This is the type of technology that we're going to be using as we move forward with our asset management program. And as time goes on, we'll better be able to determine what the cost of an actual condition would run.
But I'm sure they must have some kind of estimate because they've been doing this around the world, I heard.
Right.
So, but it does, as you say, something for us to be looking at in the future to reduce the cost of these breaks that we have had all the time.
Absolutely. One of the things we're working on, and we just talked about it today, is to try to figure out, of the recent breaks we've had, and you probably remember the big break along Twin Oaks Valley Road and the one along San Marcos Boulevard, the majority of the cost of those repairs was because of the pavement that was damaged. Once the line blew, it lifted pavement, and we were replacing hundreds of or thousands of square feet of pavement. So if we could identify where the line's going to break before it breaks, we can isolate the hole. And you can see, just in the PICA assessment, the hole is pretty small to access the pipe. It's when it blows and damages the rest of the pavement that the costs really go up.
Director Martin,
Yes, I did understand you just.
your
yes
mic
or
is,
no.
please, thank you.
I did understand you to say you haven't gotten the full report back for you to study it and look at it. Do you know if all the dry utilities are in up there?
They are,
Cable,
yes.
all that's in, because we're dealing with ductile. We're dealing with stuff that fails all over the city. I don't know why we just wouldn't replace it. To be honest, why we take that responsibility on of taking pipe that's that old, where we know it's a failing pipe. You'll be able to answer that when you get the reports back, I guess.
Thank you. And Director Sinella?
Thank you, President Evans. And just, I think just to kind of get us back to the presentation and the video, I've always been impressed with you and your team's videos. They seem like they get better and better every single one we see, and this was by far one of the best. And I think you're taking a new technology and you're showing not just us, but I've seen these videos on Facebook, and I think the Water Authority also put it out there as well. You're showing the public some of the new innovative things that are out there. So that's really cool. Kudos for doing that. And because there was some numbers floated up here, if I'm correct, this particular study, this particular assessment is funded by the developer and not by Vallecitos.
Yes, that 135 includes Vallecitos inspection time, and 100% of it is funded by the developer.
Thank you.
Well said. I was going to say, I think it's really important that we can show the public what we do, and I'm excited that we're being very proactive, because what we hear all the time is leaks, because all of the districts are reaching where their pipes are old and need to be replaced, so we're ahead of the curve. I also saw the hazmat one I always thought it would be fun to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. That was frightening, but I appreciate very much that they do it. Thank you, and congratulations on your awards and for being leaders in the innovation industry.
One more
Yes,
question,
Director
I'm
Martin?
sorry. One more question for you is, you said that they reimbursed us for all of your time, your staff's time. I saw 4 people there, an inspector there. How much was that, and how much did you bill them for, and how much have you received?
So they did a full deposit for $135,000 for everything. So it's not a reimbursement, so we have the money on hand, and we're still charging against it. I don't have the actual account number, but I could get that back for you. But we're not done charging because we have not received the report or evaluated.
Great.
Our field work is done, but the office work has not.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anything more? Thank you for a lovely presentation. We'll move on to the consent calendar, and Mr. Gopin, I have a question for you. I'm really not familiar. I have a speaker for an item on the consent calendar. Do I pull that consent item or just have him speak? And
You can do it either way. I think you can let him speak, and if that spawns some discussion on it, then you could pull the item for
then you
discussion.
pull it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What item number is it?
He's speaking on item 1.3. It's all yours, Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, speaking as a citizen. One of the coming things for single-family homes is the question of residential water consumption. We have a chart, you provide a chart, which shows the average per capita usage, but we need a little more breakdown on these charts. One is to show where, well, first, what is in the per capita consumption. Does it include agriculture? Does it include all the public facilities, the parks? Is it based just on population divided into the total water consumption of the entire district? I think this information is quite useful if it comes out. Also, I find some of the charts you do are a little misleading or needs to be augmented. Another one would be to show how much water consumption there is per type of valve. We have the number of valves of various sizes broken down, but not on their water consumption. That becomes an issue when we have many multifamily high-density developments, which have quite a few users on each meter. And I think it's just essential that we know how much of these meters are actually consuming. And if we have the number of meters and the total usage by multifamily dwellings as well as single-family dwellings, this will help considerably. I also am not too pleased with the use of huge reserves. There seems to be a workaround the requirement that nonprofit and organizations such as you is not supposed to make money. Reasonable reserves, yes. A year's maintenance, yes. 5 years, and then using the money for other uses, no. And lastly, on the investments, I notice we're still using a very high percentage of non-rated investments. I don't think this is a wise path to go to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion for approval? So moved. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We will now move on to our action items, and the first one is 2.1, acceptance of the Lawrence Welk Court water line replacement capital improvement project.
And Ryan will take that item.
Thank you, General Manager Prum. Good evening, members of the board. First item tonight is the project acceptance of the Lawrence Welk water line. One moment, bear with me. Where's maximize that? There we go. Sorry. Okay. 12-inch diameter steel pipeline from 1976 was installed in a district easement in Lawrence Welk Court. District staff responded to a break at Lawrence Welk Court on September 9th, 2018. The pipe break was unable to be repaired by district staff due to the constructability elements, including deep excavations and the presence of rock. A temporary high line was installed to provide service through the existing steel pipeline at the time, while planning and budgeting were performed to complete the project during this fiscal year. Staff opened bids from 4 contractors, and on November 6, 2019, the board awarded the contract to Southland Paving for $144,975. Construction began December 16th and was completed on January 30th of 2020. Staff prepared the design, bid documents, and performed inspection and construction management services. The original project budget was $679,000 with 2 change orders totaling $1,800 or 1% of the original contract value. The district spent $227,426 in total, including staff costs and geotechnical services, resulting in a budget surplus of $451,574. Staff recommends project acceptance and authorizing the general manager to file notice of completion and release of retention funds to the contractor in accordance with the contract documents.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept this. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's been passed unanimously. Item 2.2, construction contract acceptance of the schoolhouse tank refurbishment.
So before Ryan jumps in, I'll just say, remember that the last project, we saved you $451,000.
Well said, thank you. Second item for schoolhouse tank refurbishment project acceptance. The interior lining of the 2.4 million gallon schoolhouse tank has deteriorated and required refurbishment to replace the existing lining and cathodic protection system. The board awarded Harper & Associates Engineering a purchase order for design and inspection services on July 19, 2017. Staff opened bids from 4 contractors on March 21, 2019, with West Coast Industrial Coatings as the lowest responsible bidder at $535,000. The board authorized the contract award on April 17, 2019 to West Coast Industrial Coatings. Work began in May of 2019. There were a total of 3 change orders amounting to $180,946, or 34% of the original contract value. The largest of the 3 totaled $160,000, which was for structural repairs of the rafters discovered after the initial blast inspection revealed extensive corrosion. The board on July 17, 2019 authorized 3 change orders, and at that time, staff identified that an increase in the project budget would be required, but that action was stayed until the contract acceptance, when staff could accurately identify the exact amount required. Change order numbers 1 through 3 added 65 total calendar days to the contract. Construction was completed and accepted by January 31st, 2020. Staff provided construction management and engineering services during construction. Harper & Associates Engineering provided professional design and inspection services during construction. And the extended duration of the contract added on an additional time and services for Harper, requiring amendment number 1 for them, totaling $10,309. The original budget was $782,000. All the original scope items for the contract totaled $736,254 coming in within budget, but taking into account change orders number 1 through 3 and the design services amendment number 1, took the total amount to $927,510, giving us a budget shortfall of $145,510. Staff recommends project acceptance for schoolhouse tank refurbishment project as follows. First, to authorize increasing the project budget by $145,510. And second, to authorize the general manager to file notice of completion and release retention funds to the contractor in accordance with the contract documents.
Thank you.
Move to accept.
Second.
Just a quick question. So I think I heard you correctly that once they started the project and they got in there, they found some additional corrosion. It wasn't, because I know that we typically, when we compete a project, we usually take either the lowest or one of the lowest bidders. So it's not one of those cases where they came in low to get the job and then increased their costs after the fact. This was, they found something new that we were not aware of when they started, and that's what caused the increase?
That's correct. The design engineer and staff were unable to do a full inspection of the rafters inside the tank. When they got in there to start performing the blast inspection, it took away that surface layer of lining and revealed the pitting or the corrosion behind the lining. And that is when the full extent of corrosion revealed itself during construction.
Thank you.
Director Elitharp, do you have a question?
No, well, other than to say that having been involved in dozens of these over a 25-year span, it's very common that you don't know what you're getting into till they actually remove coating, so.
Good to know, thank you.
And weren't those change orders brought forward earlier on for this portion? Okay, we have a motion to approve. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Good job, Zach. Good job. Your superiors better watch out for stuff. Whoever that is.
Next item is 2.3, review of district ordinances, policies, and contracts. Would you like to comment on this since it was brought forward by you, Director Sinella?
Yeah, so I think last year was a bit of a learning year for us, and I recognize that all of us up here have only been on the board. Maybe, Jim, you've been the longest, I think, but all of us are relatively new, by far less than a decade. And, there was a few items that came up last year that caused a little bit of confusion, kind of revealed that some of our policies and ordinances weren't always as clear as they could be. And I think I've already brought this up before, but we got to finalize it. I'd like to have one of our committees work with staff to review, kind of do an overall policy review, if you will, and then report back to the board some suggestions on some enhancements.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? If not, I'd like to say, I think after I read what our first direction sort of implied for staff, and they want more direction, I would wonder if we could not add this to the workshop we're doing next week for all 5 of us to take a little time and really not just a committee look at it, but all 5 of us give you direction, and then on what we really feel is important. I don't think when I read your thing that we want every single contract necessarily reviewed, but that would be my suggestion as we save it for further discussion at that time.
Yeah, just to clarify, because I didn't go into detail because I thought we discussed this already at a prior meeting, but I also don't think we need to look at every single one of our ordinances and policies. I think the first kind of kickoff committee meeting, how I envision it, would be to have that committee and staff get together, brainstorm as to what we exactly want to do, how large of a scope we want to look at, and then prioritize some areas that we want to look at, and then bring those priorities back to the board and give a little bit more of an outline of what we're going to do, get the board's buy-in and ultimate approval, and then move forward on looking at those ordinances that have been identified as priorities.
Thank you. Director Hernandez?
Yes, and I would agree with Director Sinella that there are just too many. And because it is policies and contracts, I think that the committee, and should be a joint committee between policies and contracts or legal, whatever the other committee is, to look at just which policies and or contracts we want to review to bring to the board for that discussion. Because, if they're numbered sequentially, there's 216 at least. And so I don't think we want to look at all of them.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify what I was thinking. If we take 2 committees, we have 4 people working on the same thing. So my thought was, if you all are agreeable to it, is that at the workshop where we're doing our goal setting, we see if in that workshop we can come up with the basics that everyone agrees on. And at that point, the basics would then be sent back to the committees to research them further. I personally am on the policy committee, but I haven't heard all 5 of you express what you're concerned with. So I was hoping we could do a little bit more discussion at that time. Director Pruitt, I mean, you lost your salary.
But elevated in stature. So, just a couple comments. One is that we do have a goal-setting workshop planned for next Tuesday, March 3rd, from 2 to 5 or 5:30 at the Encino Wastewater Authority's boardroom. So it'll be off-site, but it's a meeting specifically for our board to engage in goal discussions. And when this was first brought up on, I think it was December 18th of last year, it was not agendized. So the board did not have an opportunity at that time. So it's taken us a while to get this in front of the board, but waiting another week to have a more in-depth discussion certainly, I don't think would hurt things.
Director Martin.
Yeah, let's just add it for the discussion of that day. But it's going to make that day longer.
Much longer.
Yes.
I envision that adding about 2 hours to that meeting.
Yeah, you got 201 things to look at.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Well, I would like to try it at that meeting personally, and if it gets that long, we can set aside a separate workshop.
Yeah, and I would suggest maybe at that meeting, we decide to set up some other forum to focus on that. If it looks like it's going to be a long conversation, it doesn't have to be resolved in that window that we have set aside.
So I'll make a motion, yes?
If I can just, since I put it on the agenda, I want to at least one last chance to advocate for this, because I don't understand what the problem is. Instead of adding 2+ hours to our goal-setting meeting and really probably getting us sidetracked from actually setting goals, which I'm really fearful that it will, why don't we have a 2-member committee, like we do on other things, take a first stab at it, and then bring it back to the board. If at that time, the board says, no, this isn't what we really envisioned, they can either redirect that committee to do something different or kill it altogether.
Director Martin?
And my thought process is, I think staff knows a lot of these ordinances and knows where the problem spots are. They can point them out because they've run into them much more than we have. We've run into a few, but staff has run into quite a few, I'm sure. If we run into a few, they must run into them all the time. So if you want to continue the conversation at the workshop, that's fine, but I think you're going to need to do a committee at some point in time.
And I would just to beg to differ that we found out last year that there was a lot of things that staff was caught off guard on. Desalination contract is a perfect example. So, and again, it's not this staff because neither one of these 2 gentlemen were here at that time, but nevertheless, we still live under those terms. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, I appreciate the discussion, but I still feel that if it's going to take us 2 hours to start, to even just figure out what we're interested in, we should discuss it when we have the time to do that and not tonight. So I propose that we discuss it at the...
Why don't we do it right now?
I'm going to make a motion that we move it to the committee meeting and we all have a chance to do further input.
Second.
Quick
Thank
question.
you.
Do we have any other meetings that day?
On the 3rd?
We're not constrained by anything, are we?
We were constrained by some directors' availability in terms of the earlier start time.
Okay, but it can go later.
So it's set for 2 p.m. on the 3rd at this time?
Yeah, 2 p.m.
But it can go later.
Yes.
There's no constraint, okay.
I don't have any.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we move this item to the workshop on March 3rd. Is that correct? You're looking at me, Mr. Gilpin.
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay, it's 4-4 and 1 against, and we'll do it on the 3rd. Thank you.
I did put in a slip, Chris.
Oh, you know what? I had that until we got in the, I'm so sorry. Yes, Mr. Hunsaker. I apologize.
I do think that some of the ordinances need a little clarification and some changes as well. We are coming forward in one of the biggest housing building booms of all time for their district. Just one potential development, such as Newland Sierra, combined with SB 330, I believe it is, can completely overwhelm all of our capacity. At that point, we should require a complete redoing of our master water plan if it is no longer relevant. Also, since we are going to need much more capacity to meet these new developments, the question of detachment fees should be revisited. Detachment fees made sense if you had, perhaps, if you had built something for them, in anticipation of them, and didn't have ready customers for that capacity. You are essentially charging twice for the same capacity. Once to detach it, and the other is to reacquire it. One or the other makes sense, and I think it is that detachment for something that we haven't made facilities for specifically. There shouldn't be any detachment fees except for a minor, say $100 or $200 processing fee. Capacity fees, I don't think they are at all adequate. You're showing deficiencies, deficits, and I think that needs to be covered. Also leasing. I see some of the leasing rates applied towards capacity fee rates, and they don't match. So when can you take this capacity fee and change it into a, when you take a leasing fee and change it into a capacity fee for a new development, is that appropriate? And when you have leasing, why is it leasing rate for some and a capacity for others? And I think that'll do it.
Thank you.
Sure. And before we move on to the next item, in preparation for the goals meeting, I'd like to request staff provide me a copy of every single ordinance that we have. I know it's going to be large, so I'll come by and pick it up in person, because we're going to talk about them on the 3rd.
Director Snell, just for clarification, do you want ordinances that no longer pertain? Some are terminated and
No, just the
superseded by
ones that
others,
are-
just the active ordinance?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to item 2.4, California Special Districts Association's call for nominations, seat C. Director Bruin, do you have any background on that, or is there any?
Yeah, they're just looking to see if anybody's interested in filling a vacant, soon-to-be vacant seat. So they're usually looking for
Any
nominations that we would submit.
Going once? Going twice? Okay, we'll move
I
on.
thought you would jump on that.
Sounds like I'm going to be reviewing ordinances. Moving on to 2.5, San Marcos Chamber of Commerce State of the City Address and Ordinance.
Move to approve.
Second with comment, question?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Comment away.
When I read the report, the per diem request was just for Director Martin. I also attended that meeting, and I thought we got that approved at our last board meeting.
I thought we did too.
I thought we did too. Go ahead.
Which one are, per diem for which event?
State of the city.
Yeah, so this is to add it so that going forward, we don't have to address this anymore. That's the
Thank you very
purpose of the.
much.
Yeah, so we got approval for the past one, and to make sure this doesn't have to be addressed in the future, we're adding it as a compensable per diem for future events.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
And it also adds Cal D-Cell to the list of authorized memberships.
Well, we've already fixed one of the ordinance I had concerns with, so you don't have to print out 212. Wait, is there a motion and a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 2.6, San Marcos Boys and Girls Club Annual Auction. I asked staff to put this on the agenda again this year. You guys, I'm sure, recognize it from every other year. It's that time that our local Boys and Girls Club is going to be having their event. And as you guys know, there's a tremendous amount of involvement from all levels of the community and government, local government at this event. And I just wanted to throw it out there for the board's consideration to consider doing what we have done in the past, and that is to support the Boys and Girls Club and be with the community that night with a table sponsorship.
And I would agree with you, Director Sinella. I think that's something that the board actually does, our public outreach, and we do it very well there. And I think purchasing a table works, no per diem, but just purchasing the table would be a wonderful thing to show our support to the community.
A second?
It's a motion or a second, whichever you prefer.
Just to add a little texture, so I want to make sure we get clarity whether we're doing a table sponsor or individual attendee sponsors. In the past, we haven't been able to fill the table that we bought. So I just want to make sure the board's aware that if we buy a table, we're paying for 10, whether we show up with 2 or 6 or whatever.
Paying for a table is what I would recommend.
Yeah, I recommend that too, because that's in line with the school district and the city, and it's just as much of supporting our youth in the community and being present at that level with the group and being with our peers and other local government agencies. I think that's important, and we just have to do a better job to encourage folks to either our staff or our employees, or in some cases, if we get to the point, like I think we did in the years past, where we actually let some of our customers come and participate as well. And so whatever that might look like to find, the 3 or 4 missing spots that we need, I think we can manage that.
Or we just look at it, when they resell the same seats a second time, we look at it as a true donation to the Boys and Girls Club of $1,000. We just happen to get a table at the same time, but it's a sponsorship.
Okay. So.
Motion.
I'll go ahead and second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our action items. It will now be report from the general manager.
Yeah, so I have 3 items to talk about. The first 2 are environmental conditions that are outside of our control. So it's an intriguing topic, but so yesterday at about 9:18, we experienced a power outage at Meadowlark. So the good news is the SCADA system worked well. We got the notification, staff responded, multiple staff members were there. All the operations continued to go as planned. We didn't have any compliance failures, so we don't have to report anything. Well, we may have to report things, but there's no spills or anything like that. So we contacted SDG&E to find out what the problem was. They didn't have record of a problem. Our staff kind of walked the perimeter of the site, and they noticed a jumper wire, for lack of a better word, from a power pole that was disconnected. SDG&E is in the process of undergrounding the wiring to Meadowlark. So we contacted SDG&E and said, hey, there's a wire hanging here. They came out and they said, oh yeah, there's a wire hanging there. We'll fix it. So they fixed it, and power came back on at 4:17 this morning, but some staff worked throughout the night to, monitor things and make sure everything worked out well. So that's good, but it's important that these things work. I mean, we make investments in SCADA and duty personnel and all this stuff, and it's events like this that make you realize that it's a good investment, because if we didn't have backup power generators and a good SCADA system, we would have had wastewater that wasn't being treated and maybe discharged and caused big violations. So this stuff's important as we come into the budget cycle. If you see things about SCADA and backup power and other things like that, keep things like this in mind. And I think staff did a great job, so it was Ed and his team that did an awesome job.
Before you move on, Director Martin.
Yeah, I have a question, and boy, I believe in patting our staff on the back. Monday at 9:18, you said our staff was all present. It's like, well, they should have been there. That's a normal work hour, is it not? 9:18 in the morning?
No, it was 9:18 p.m. Last night. It was last night at 9:18 p.m. last night, and
Okay.
Power came back on at 4:17 in the morning.
Okay,
This
but
morning.
we have our largest, most expensive generator there. It's the size of a truck. Did that turn on immediately?
Yes. As I understand it, that's how it's supposed to operate, right?
Okay, so everything operated the way it's supposed to. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
thank the board for allowing you to have that big a generator and that SCADA system to pop right on there, and the employees just had to show up and look around.
Well done.
Okay.
And the next?
And the next item, so we all know we have a district-wide solar project that's underway, and it's going to be delayed. And one of the reasons it's going to be delayed is because the panels, solar panels, are manufactured in China, and the COVID-19, otherwise known as the coronavirus, is causing delays in manufacturing and shipping. So we don't have an estimate yet of how long it's going to be delayed, but you'd think these unrelated things of viruses in a foreign land, how could it affect Vallecitos customers? Well, that's how it does it. So just want to let the board be aware that there may be an impact to the schedule.
Question?
A question from Director Hernandez?
Yes, you know, I've been, my conspiracy letters that I get all the time are talking about this very situation and are potentially indicating that because of the shutdowns, there may be increases in the cost of the products. In our contract, if there are increases to the cost of the panels, what happens?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but this does kick in what's called a force majeure provision in a contract, and basically what that means is act of God, things outside the control of a contractor. So he probably wouldn't be able to hit him with a delay claim because he can't get the materials due to something else.
Understand that.
But if it causes the price to go up, I would think it would probably fit under the same provision, and maybe General Counsel Gilpin can weigh in to add texture to that.
It may fall within the force majeure because of those virus issues. I mean, you'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, but, yeah.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please?
It may, Director Hernandez, fall within that force majeure because it's an unanticipated, essentially, act that would relieve us of that. Would depend on the specific language of the contract.
So if there is an increase, we may have to endure that.
Correct,
Yeah,
that's a possibility.
They'll make a claim, they'll submit higher costs, and we'll have to decide, and they'll have to cite certain provisions of the agreement that would lead us to believe that they're right, and then we consult with our attorney and figure it out.
All right, thank you.
Director Martin?
I have a question. If we talk to the company that we, and ask them if they bought American, how much more is it? Americans do make it, and I think that's something we need to get used to in the future, buying American. So what the cost is, and then we can make a decision, because they make it. China's not the only place that makes these. They're made right here in this country. So what's the difference in the cost? I mean, rather than delaying everything, tell us the difference.
Yeah. So this project's a little bit unique in that it's a power purchase agreement. We don't own it. We're not paying for the materials themselves. This is something being provided by the power purchase agreement provider, and they get to choose, as long as the material meets the specifications, they get to choose where they purchase them from, unless we put in a Buy America type of provision.
Well, I'm saying put it in a provision, but find out what it would cost. Just out of curiosity. I mean, we can make a decision. We'll wait. We can make a decision, say, we'll pay the difference.
Yeah. We can have our engineer talk to the power purchase
This
agreement.
virus could be around for years.
Yes.
And we've waited years already.
Thank you.
I have a third item, it's real quick. It's just a reminder that we have a rate hearing tomorrow, 5 o'clock in the board chambers.
Oh, here?
Right here, yeah.
For
That's
what?
all.
Electricity
Yes, or water.
or what?
And as a reminder, thank you, I know you're joking, but as a reminder, it's for water rate increases only. There's no wastewater increases proposed. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Director, Mr. Gilpin.
Yeah, I just had one item I wanted to bring to your attention. I think some of you may have heard about this previously, but there's been a statewide attempt to bring actions challenging water rates against multiple water districts, cities, and that action has now been filed in Santa Clara County. Vallecitos is named in the action, but we have not yet been served. I don't know that anyone's been served. It's a bizarre claim, but essentially they're challenging all of the rates in all of the public entities that have been named as either subsidizing government water services such as fire hydrants and or agricultural rates under 218. And so I think there's going to be a lot of brouhaha relative to this in the press, and you'll probably hear about it in your outings, so I wanted to bring it to your attention. It was filed by a law firm, a very small, tiny place, Driscoll and Omens, yeah, O-M-E-N-S. Yes, Mike? Director Snell.
Thanks for making us aware of this, but are you talking about the fire hydrant itself or the water that the firefighters use to put out fires?
The claim is that you are not properly charging them for the water delivered to the hydrants, and as a result are subsidizing the governmental service. And that, in essence, they're not paying their effective rate, meaning other ratepayers are paying more. They're also making a similar claim relative to agriculture, that you're giving, not you specifically, but everybody named in the complaint is giving subsidies to agricultural users.
And we get complaints from the agricultural community that we don't have an ag rate.
Yeah.
And so that seems like it's a moot point. But I'm really kind of, I don't know, taken aback, I guess, by there's somebody that actually filed a lawsuit that they don't want firefighters to have access to the water to be able to, or they want the cities, they want us to charge the city for the water that the firefighters are using?
Yeah, I think their claim is the wrong parties are paying for it. It shouldn't be water customers, it should be the cities.
Isn't it the ratepayer or taxpayer either way?
I did mention bizarre.
Okay, I know you did, in all fairness, and it is very bizarre. Okay.
All right.
Please keep us posted.
And it's not just one person that signed it. It's all one from all
Well,
these
they filed it.
amazing number of districts.
Yeah, it's a lot of districts. And each county or each district has a representative who is the named class plaintiff in the complaint. Yours is a person named Stephen Perry, who is the named retail water customer for Vallecitos Water District. So he and a bunch of other people are named as plaintiffs in the case. They're trying to bring it as a class action lawsuit in Santa Clara County.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I skipped you.
No
Director
problem.
Martin.
No personal offense, but your profession really stinks. There's a name, I was at one of the meetings we just attended, and there's a name for those attorney firms, well, it's both sides. There's a name for the attorney firms that bring up frivolous lawsuits, hoping to get a piece of money from all of them. What's the name of that? What do they call them? Do you know what they call them? Okay, but there's also a name for attorneys that try to defend them against those lawsuits, because the courts realize what's going on. And the courts can step in and say, this is BS. And they do that. So why isn't that happening with this one?
Well, it may, Director Martin. It's like everybody gets to say their piece and then it gets challenged, right? He's filed the complaint, he hasn't served it. We'll see where it rings out, but.
There's a name for it, though. They brought it up because there was something else about the PFAS and the PFOS. Forget what it was. I wish I could remember what they called it.
Vexatious litigants?
There you go.
Well, vexatious litigant is someone that files multiple frivolous lawsuits. There's actually a code definition of it, and you have to have filed 3 previous lawsuits that have been summarily dismissed. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's not the exact same, but it's frivolous. And there should be a name for those people. I know what I call them, but there should be a legal name for them.
Well, I appreciate being lumped in there, but yeah.
And Director Sinella.
And this kind of popped the light bulb off in my head, but with this potentially frivolous lawsuit, at any cost that this lawsuit requires us to either fight, defend, whatever, it's going to be burdened by our ratepayers. Is there any opportunity in these types of situations that we can recover if it ends up being either thrown out of court or we win or the group of the agencies win? Can we go back to the people who actually brought this unnecessary cost to our ratepayers and recover that?
I'll give you the good news and the bad news. You can recover costs, which are pretty limited. You can't recover your attorney's fees.
That's the most expensive part.
Right. So.
Attorneys wrote the law.
So to be clear, the folks that signed on to this have basically signed on to waste ratepayer money.
Well, I would say they brought a claim and they think they got a righteous claim, but I don't think they do.
They don't.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we'll just put your expenses under cost. not due under attorney fees anymore. Is that allowable? The next report is the San Diego County Water Authority, and our meeting is tomorrow. Encino Wastewater Authority, Capital Improvement Committee.
We're under construction on a number of projects. The big one was the cogeneration wall repair that we saw pictures of. They finally got which seemed to me a lengthy amount of time for the shoring design. I didn't say anything because I wasn't involved in the actual design, but it took them about 4 months, and they didn't display the design specifically. But they got the design. They're now going to put that out to bid so they can do the shoring, so they can take all the wall that's deteriorated away and then rebuild it. So that was the lot of the Capital Committee meeting. And I'll talk about the board meeting after we hear from policy.
All right. Director Martin?
Yeah. The policy committee took up all of its time with something that Jim wants to talk about next.
No, go ahead.
Took up all of its time on the south parcel. And to put it in a nutshell, what we've had staff doing, and we thought it was unanimous, we had the staff looking at ways to make money on that empty parcel for 7 to 10 years and lease it out to whomever until we were ready to build our pure water, which is probably 7 to 10 years away. And we had many criterias on it, like no inhabitation by people, parks, those kind of things, because once you build a park, you can never get rid of it. Once you build anything with its people, you can never get rid of it. So one of the things was electrical generation, a battery storage area, which is going to pay a lot of money on what they do, and they want 2 acres only, but they're paying $80,000 to put the 2 acres in, and they're doing a month energy storage. So during night, they fill the batteries up, and during the daytime, they put it back on the grid. And they make enough money in that transfer to afford to pay the lease and to make money. They've done it up in LA. Ours would be the second one they've done, but other companies are out there doing it. Relatively clean, but the thing once you enter the contract is the infrastructure has to be in place to make this happen. So the preferred site is where you already have a peaker plant or any type of a plant would be the perfect place. We're not that perfect, but we're just down the street from one. So entering into the contract, no one has a problem with that. The other 2 options that made its way through was 10 acres of it to be used to store automobiles. You might notice over in Carlsbad, they have a huge amount of storage for automobiles all over the place. And they were looking at 10 acres to do that, and 7 years. Long story short, everyone seemed to be for it, but at the meeting today, we found out not everybody was for it. And when we took a weighted vote, 67% of the weighted vote said yes. And that's enough to pass it through for them to continue on, and then there'll be one more bite at the apple when they actually are ready to sign the lease. So it was interesting because the people that spoke up, the way the voting works is the 2 largest, which are Carlsbad and Vista, they had split votes, so they canceled each other out. Vallecitos was for it, Encinitas was against it, Vista was half and half, and Leucadia was for it. So we had 67, so it was enough to pass it into the next one. And the people who are for it are basically saying, let's make use of it. It's been empty since 1995. 25 years it's been empty, producing nothing. And it's just sitting there. That at least for the next 7 years, we won't need it for our pure water, which we will need it for. So let's find a use that can be used for 7 years. And they have one company that comes in, they'll take 10 acres and do that with it. The other side, the people that were dissenting, a couple of people that were dissenting, want to use it for a, what do we call it, Jim? A homeless encampment.
Safe park.
No, homeless encampment for people who want to go to the beach, because it's red beach property. So that was interesting. They obviously lost, so we're moving forward on it, but there's not no direct answer to that yet. We'll wait and see. Jim, do you have anything else to add to that I might have missed?
What was quite surprising is one of the board members said, oh, this is just a little bit of money.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted. I mean, $70,000 a month times 12 is 94. That's almost $1 million for 10 years, 7 years. You know, that's going to give us a big chunk of the money we need for this pure water operation, which is going to be a $400 million project if it's a nickel. So I'm glad we got it approved to go forward with the lease. And again, we'll have another opportunity at the board for ultimate approval. So although we're going to have to do a little work on the sidelines to get that done, I think it's going to be very beneficial for the district, the Encina Authority, and then also for Vallecitos ratepayers.
Thank you. That was very interesting and informative.
One other thing about the meeting that I might mention, where our general manager's name came up after. But yesterday, the North County, yeah, well, whatever you're gonna call it. I guess the new name now is NorTec, One Water, North County, One Water, of which our general manager has been a huge pushing part of it. Mike was very excited about talking about it, Mike Steinlich, that we started moving on it, actually. We started guaranteeing some usage.
Yeah, we're all, many agencies were involved. James was part of that too. He's been an instrumental part of that. We're trying to get all the member agency water districts to see how much water they would take from a potable reuse project in North County. So we're trying to move that ball forward. And he was a big part of that.
Great job.
Great. That is great. Okay, standing committees. Finance?
Finance meets next week.
Finance meets
On the
next week.
second.
Any other standing committees to report?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, moving on. Direct reports on meetings, conferences, and seminars attended. If you don't mind, I'll start with you, Director Ellithorpe.
All right, well, I attended the Urban Water Institute Spring Conference last week, a 3-day session.
Can you speak close?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
A few notable sessions that I'll quickly mention. There was one on an overview of claims and litigation issues for water districts, and they talked about the very things we just talked about, vexatious and frivolous lawsuits. That was a big part of the discussion. Another one was institutional and regulatory challenges, overcoming those to drive success, getting multiple agencies to work together to complete projects that otherwise they couldn't do by themselves. Another one was unleashing innovation in your utility, and then another was cyber threats to utilities. A very interesting discussion. One that I found pretty amazing was called Hindsight is 2020, and so there was several speakers on this panel. One was Steve Erie. People have probably heard of him, Professor Emeritus at UC San Diego, but he got up and gave a lot of historical context to the San Diego County Water Authority, which I thought it filled in some missing pieces for me historically on the development of the IID transfer agreement and some of the many other projects that the Water Authority built over the last 30 or so years, the billions of dollars worth of projects that they invested in. So it wasn't a particularly supportive or flattering view, but it was very interesting historically. And the other one that kind of floored me on this panel was Kevin Hunt, the general manager of Central Basin Water District. Basically got up there and said, I've been general manager since 2014, I think he said. And he proceeded to say he's got a 5-member board, 4 of them are extremely corrupt. There's one that isn't. And that's got to be a very interesting next board. when he returns to his agency. And the room was just, I mean, jaws, you could hear him jaws dropping on the table. I mean, it was just, people were speechless. I mean, but afterward, people were very thankful at the frankness that these speakers shown. So it's kind of unusual for a water conference to hear something like that. But
Where did he used to be the general manager?
the Central Basin's got you probably, if you've heard, they've got a long history of some very corrupt things going on amongst the elected officials. He got up there and basically talked about it, which was highly unusual. So, all in all, a very interesting conference, and maybe you can weigh in.
I heard he had a call into Vallecitos, but I don't.
I'm sorry, was that it for you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Director Martin.
I'll continue along that vein. Very interesting. I got more insight into PFAS and PFOS, which we've all talked about, but obviously it's the chemical that comes from all types of plastic, not just Teflon, but all types of plastic gives this off, and it's in groundwater. And I was in that meeting with Glenn, and I said, Glenn, he goes, we don't have any groundwater. I said, thank God. We don't have any PFAS or PFOS. But it turns out that all you need is one drop, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, because that's what I thought I heard about it, one drop in 12 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Yeah, it was in the parts per trillion.
Yeah, for the
Parts per trillion. That's how much it takes to say you have too much PFAS. So, it was very interesting, very enlightening, and the whole weekend was very good. The whole week was, 3 days was very, very interesting, so I appreciate it. Thank you. And the other thing I had was the State of the City address, Chamber of Commerce. I think Rebecca did a wonderful job talking about the city, where it's going, where it's been, how it's doing. And she did a special tribute, actually, to our past mayors, Corky Smith and Lee Thibodeau. Did a very nice talk on them, because it's upon all the building blocks of all the people, like yourself, Director Evans, that were on the council prior to, and they all added up to what San Marcos is today. So it was very good. The only thing I didn't see, which I thought you should have given a tribute to Jim Desmond, because he was the mayor for 12 years, and that wasn't even mentioned. That was interesting. But it was very interesting and enlightening. Thank you very much. That's it.
I had one other, I forgot I attended the Council on Water Utilities meeting last Tuesday, last week. And the speaker was the CEO of Rancho Guajito in Escondido, and that was a very interesting talk on a 23,000 acre basically ranching operation that they've got going there, been going on there for a couple hundred years.
Wow. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I also attended the State of the City. Dittos on everything that Director Martin has said. Well worth the go, not only to hear what is going on at the city, but the interaction at the meet and greet port, and then sitting at the table talking with a ratepayer and seeing how he's feeling about the rate increases, and he went, pennies, so not a big deal. Then at the Casa dinner, we had the CEO of the Farm Bureau, and the young lady just taking over, Hannah Beebe, I think is how you pronounce her last name. Very interesting how we are 15th in the state or the country in agricultural production, and the average agricultural site is between 1 and 9 acres. So it's not, we're not talking like Imperial Valley, but they make up a great deal of our agriculture, and of course water and the availability of it is quite at the top of their list about concerns. So it was very important.
Thank you. Director Sinella.
Yeah, the only thing I attended was the California Special Districts Association meeting that Director Hernandez was just referencing, and I won't repeat what he said about the Farm Bureau, but they're definitely concerned about the price of water. In addition to that, there was also a presentation by the statewide CSDA team, and they presented basically a 2019 dashboard of all of their accomplishments throughout the course of the year, and really focused on their activities in Sacramento and supporting and opposing bills, and they had a lot of successes to talk about, so it was interesting.
I bet that was. And I have no reports. So, other business. Just we have a meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. And director's comments on future agenda items? Any? I think we are adjourned. Thank you.